Adrian Autry is expected to be back with Syracuse next season, and we're just going to air it all out here on this podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we're going to talk about how Adrian Autry is reportedly expected to be back with Syracuse next season. This is coming from Field of 68 basketball analyst Jeff Goodman, according to his sources. So on this podcast, we are just going to air it all out, right? We're going to go through the stages of grief, talking about Adrian Autry and why a lot of us do not want him to be back, but ultimately we're going to have to, by the end of this podcast, just accept the fact he is going to be back with Syracuse for next season. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. As of this recording, Adrian Autry is finishing up his second regular season at Syracuse basketball, and he owns an overall record of 32-29 in his short career as head coach. And in case you all missed it, by the way, Syracuse basketball over the weekend, they clinched a spot in the ACC tournament. Hip, hip, hooray. I mean, at least they're in the conference tournament. It's better than not being in the conference tournament and dealing with that embarrassment, because trust me, that level of embarrassment would have probably been a whole lot worse than this. But it has not been a good year for Syracuse basketball, obviously. And just a couple of weeks ago, CNY Central ran a poll about Adrian Autry, asking fans how they feel about him. And there were over 2,100 votes in that poll, and 2/3 of those fans, so 66%, said they did not want Adrian Autry back for year 3 at Syracuse basketball. So, judging by that poll, I think it's fair to say that many of you all who watch and listen to this podcast do not agree with Adrian Autry coming back for another year. And I'm with you all in that regard. I don't want Adrian Autry coming back, which is why we're going to do this podcast, go through the stages of grief all together, and then by the end, we're just going to accept the fact that he's back. At the end of this podcast, all right, this is it. There will be no more fire Adrian Autry talk here on Locked On Syracuse, at least from myself, once we are done with this podcast, all right? So the 5 stages of grief, we're going to go in order: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally, you have acceptance. Let's start with denial, all right? This cannot be happening. I mean, it cannot be happening. Syracuse basketball is actually bringing back Adrian Autry after this disaster. There's no way. I mean, come on now. I mean, Syracuse basketball this season, as of this recording, I get they have 2 regular season games left, but they are 12-17 overall and 6-12 in the ACC. They are going to clinch their worst season since 1969. And I have said this before, and I will say it again. It is not hyperbole. It is fact based on win-loss percentage. You can go to College Basketball Reference, look up all the Syracuse basketball seasons. It has not been this bad with this program since 1969. So I just do not want to believe that they are actually going to bring Adrian Autry back another year after this. And barring a miracle ACC tournament run, and there's a reason why I say it's a miracle, because it's just not going to happen, Syracuse basketball is going to miss their 4th consecutive NCAA tournament. You know what that means, folks? You know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? You ready for this? That means the 2025 graduating class at Syracuse University will not get to experience watching Syracuse basketball in the NCAA tournament while being a student. They're not. Want to know the last time a graduating class at Syracuse could say that? You ready? 1972. I really feel bad for the class of 2025. Even when I was a freshman, Syracuse basketball made the tournament and proceeded to miss the tournament the next 3 years. But at least I myself, a Syracuse alum, got to experience them in the tournament and make the Sweet 16 my freshman year, which is really cool. And I understand that Adrian Autry was not the head coach of Syracuse basketball in those first 2 years. He was an assistant, but that's not being the head coach. I get it. But I still feel bad for the graduating class of 2025. And I understand that Adrian Autry in his first season won 20 games. I get it. And I thought at the time, and I still believe this, that was relatively successful for a first season as a head coach taking over for the legendary Jim Boeheim. It was a season where you can build upon. But the reality is this. They weren't even on the bubble to make the NCAA tournament. See, when I entered Syracuse as a student in 2020, there was a saying around campus that, every year around this time in March, Syracuse basketball is always on the bubble to make the NCAA tournament or not. Well, my freshman year, they were on the bubble, and they ultimately made the tournament and proceeded to go to the Sweet 16. Yay, right? After that, they have not even been close to making the tournament. See, they won 20 games last year, but we were not watching Selection Sunday thinking that Syracuse basketball had a chance to make the NCAA tournament. They didn't. They didn't have any sort of chance. And I just don't want to believe that a school that has such a rich history of basketball like Syracuse, this is the sport, ladies and gentlemen, that we kind of get to pump out our chest a little bit. We can't really do that much with football. We can't. Yeah, football has had its ebbs and flows in the history of Syracuse, but basketball has always been the sport. It's always been, we get to thump our chest around and say, yeah, we're one of the best basketball programs in the country. We're top 7 all time in NCAA wins. We've made the tournament over 40 times. That's a lot of times making the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they have that national championship in 2003. Maybe they should have more national championships than that just one in 2003. But regardless, they're one of the most storied programs in all of college basketball. You cannot tell the story of college basketball without including Syracuse in it. And I just don't want to believe that they are sticking with Adrian Autry. I just don't want to believe it. Which leads me to anger. Of course they're going to do this. Of course they do it because they're not being serious right now. They're going to cite NIL and injuries and lack of cohesion this season from the transfers. And I'm not going to sit here and say to you all that those aren't contributing factors to this miserable season. Of course they are. We've talked about it, that Syracuse didn't have the NIL to be able to compete for a national championship this season. Mike Waters' article said they had a little over $2 million. That's not enough to be a national championship caliber program, but it should be a lot better than this. A lot better. And every school deals with injuries. One of those schools that's dealing with a big injury is Louisville. Kason Pryor has been out for a very long time and is not returning this season. I imagine that, they have such a big NIL budget, but I imagine that Kason Pryor probably takes up a lot of that NIL budget because, he's really freaking good, and being really freaking good means that you're going to make a lot of freaking money. Yes, those are contributing factors, but I would not ignore the coaching of this team if I were you. But I can't tell you what to do. I can only give you facts. Okay? Evan Maya is a great analytical tool for analyzing basketball. Okay? It's a great analytical tool specifically for college. And Syracuse basketball has 11 players in its rotation. Those 11 players are JJ Starling, Chris Bell, Jaquan Carlos, Eddie Lampkin, Donnie Freeman, of course, when healthy, Jair Davis, Lucas Taylor, Elijah Chapamore, Peter Mastorovich, Kyle Cuff, and Naheem McLeod. Of those 11 players in Syracuse basketball's rotation, 7 of them are underachieving according to their preseason expectations on Evan Maya. 7 of them. That's a big number of players that are underachieving. Is that a coincidence? I think not. Now, you might be asking yourself, who are the 4 players that are at least meeting expectations or playing above their expectation? Who are they? I'll give it to you. Elijah Chopamore, Lucas Taylor, Naheem McLeod, and Peter Mastorovich. So, essentially, role players are overachieving, but the reason why those guys are overachieving is because on Evan Maya, if you go look at their preseason expected impact, they didn't have high expectations. They didn't. They weren't really supposed to play any sort of role for Syracuse this season. So the fact that they're playing means that they're overachieving. That's it. It's not like those guys are all having terrific years. I think maybe Peter Mastorovich we're a little bit pleasantly surprised about. He seems like maybe he could be a player going forward. Maybe. I don't know. That's it. Everyone else is underachieving. It's a fact. It's on Evan Maya. Go look it up. Furthermore, there are only 2 players on this entire roster that actually play that weren't either a 4 or 5-star recruit or transfer at some point in their careers. You want to know who those 2 players are? Naheem McLeod and Peter Mastorovich. Even with the injuries, even with the NIL or the lack of cohesion, whatever you want to say, there are certainly other coaches around the country that can do a much better job than what Adrian Autry has done with this Syracuse team this season. That's just a reality. There are other coaches around the country that are significantly better than Adrian Autry that I'm not saying that if we'll talk about it next segment, like what if they hired Rick Pitino in the bargaining part, but I'm not saying Rick Pitino would make this team an NCAA tournament team necessarily, but he would have them a lot better. They would be a lot better with Rick Pitino. That's for damn sure. So those are the first 2 stages of grief: denial and anger. And coming up, we'll talk about the next 2, bargaining and depression. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Attention, Locked On Syracuse fans. Ever wished you could directly support your favorite Syracuse athletes and be a part of their journey? Well, now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players that you love. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Syracuse. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the athletes that you back. And the best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's risk-free, and it's a way to show your support for the players and make your voice heard. So, for example, let's say you really want JJ Starling to return to Syracuse basketball next season. You think he can be a major contributor for this team once again next year. You want him back, right? Well, you can donate to him on Roy. And the best part is, like I just told you all, if JJ, for whatever reason, decides to enter the portal, you get your money back. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Syracuse sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Syracuse athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Once again, Field of 68 basketball analyst Jeff Goodman reported earlier today that he expects Adrian Autry to return to Syracuse basketball as the head coach next season, per his sources. And we are letting it all out here on this podcast because many of you all, including myself, disagree with Syracuse basketball bringing back Adrian Autry for another year. But later on in the show, we're going to finally all together, hopefully, come to the acceptance part and just realize he's coming back. And let's hope that we're wrong, Syracuse is right, and we're all celebrating making the Final Four next April. Sound good? All right. So there's 2 more stages of grief, though, before we get to the acceptance part. Bargaining. Has Syracuse realized that maybe they would have more NIL money to use if they had a different head coach? Right? Think of football for a moment. Fran Brown inspired a lot of confidence in Syracuse fans from day one. I wish I was the host of Locked On Syracuse at the time Fran Brown was hired, because I was jacked up for it, and he was bringing in really good players. And obviously, they just had a great first season, and we are all, I think, bought in with Fran Brown and this coaching staff. It's not that, we're not going to be critical or that we're going to question some things, but he has earned the benefit of the doubt. And as a result, when you get that belief from the fan base, you're going to get more money to your program because people believe in the head coach. What if they had hired Rick Pitino in 2023 after Boeheim retired? I understand that they were never going to actually do it because they didn't want to go from one old coach to another old coach. But what if they had hired Rick Pitino at the end of 2023? What if, right? Well, I mean, we'll never know, but maybe they would have more NIL money to work with. Maybe Rick Pitino would inspire more confidence in the fan base that he can get it done at Syracuse. I mean, he's got it done everywhere else he's been. He's getting it done at St. John's, leading him back to top 10 overall program in the country right now. What could he have done with Syracuse? We'll never know. What if instead of just promoting Adrian Autry from within, they decided to do a national head coaching search? What if Syracuse decided, I get that the report is expected back. What if Syracuse at the end of the day does decide to fire Adrian Autry and they bring in someone else? What if they say, you know what, we want to hire Will Wade. We want to hire Will Wade from McNeese State, who is a very controversial coaching option, according to many of you all here in this fan base. And I understand that he had that recruiting scandal a few years ago. So if you don't want to forgive him for that, fine. But in terms of him being a head coach, he's won everywhere he's been as a head coach. He has made the tournament in 6 of his first 10 seasons. And I am not counting the one that he is about to make again with McNeese State. He's about to lead McNeese State to 3 consecutive tournaments. So it's going to be 7 of his first 11 years in coaching college basketball. Will Wade will be in the NCAA tournament. But wait, there's more. Because in 2020, when Will Wade was with LSU, LSU would have made the NCAA tournament. They would have made it in 2020, but COVID canceled it. So really, he would have qualified for the NCAA tournament in 8 of 11 seasons coaching. And I think we'd all be thrilled if that's what Adrian Autry became, excluding the recruiting scandals. But if Adrian Autry obviously is sticking with Syracuse next year, if for the next 10, 11 years, he leads the Orange to the tournament 7, 8 times, I think we'd all be thrilled. Well, I'm not saying that Will Wade is John Wooden here, but I think he would have Syracuse basketball in a much better state than it is in right now. We certainly, I don't think we'd be having one of these seasons if Will Wade was the head coach. But we'll never know. We will never know. And the reality is, how much worse could it have possibly have gotten? I mean, they didn't make the tournament in the first year with Adrian Autry. Fine. But the second year has been this bad. It's going to be the worst season since 1969. How much worse could it really have gotten? I'll answer that for you all. It's missing the ACC tournament outright. That's it. That's the only way this season could have possibly gone worse so far. Had the Orange not made the ACC tournament. That's bargaining for you all, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get to depression. I mean, this stinks. I want Adrian Autry to prove myself and many of you all wrong. I think that we're all in this together in the sense that, hey, we want to see Syracuse win games. So if Adrian Autry is in fact sticking around, I would rather be wrong. I can't speak for you all, but I would rather be wrong in celebrating a Final Four appearance, like I told you all, next April, and laughing about how we did this podcast all together. But I have a hard time envisioning it. Now, assuming Adrian Autry won't get year 4 if they don't get to the tournament, Here's what Syracuse is banking on to get to March Madness next season. First, they're banking on their high-rated freshman class to be significant contributors this upcoming season. And the main two of them being Sadiq White and Kiyan Anthony. They are two borderline top 30 prospects. It depends on what recruiting site you use. Some of them will be in the top 30. Some of them, they're outside the top 30. But that's generally the range where Sadiq White and Kiyan Anthony are. And that's really good. That's outstanding, getting two top 30 guys. I'm not here to deny it. But banking your success on two top 30-ish freshmen this upcoming season is not a good idea. That is a recipe for disaster. That's right. Here's an example for you all. Rutgers, right? Our Northeast rival. Rutgers has two of the top three players in the class of 2024 on their roster this season, right? They have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. And by the way, those two have been terrific this season. They have certainly panned out. And I forget which one is being talked about higher, but there's buzz around college basketball and in the NBA that maybe one of them should go ahead of Cooper Flagg in the upcoming NBA draft. I doubt it'll happen. I think Cooper Flagg's going to go number one overall. I think it's basically a slam dunk, but there's some talk about whether or not one of those Rutgers guys should be number one actually, or maybe the second and third overall picks are going to come from Rutgers. But guess what? Despite them having two top three freshmen overall in the country, maybe two of the top 10 players overall in college basketball, that team stinks. Rutgers isn't good at all. Rutgers is not making the NCAA tournament unless they win the Big Ten. That's it. They stink too. And I'm going to let you all in a little secret. Sadiq White and Kiyan Anthony are not better, at least right now, than Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. I don't want to sound negative, but that's just a reality. So how could we bank our success next season on Sadiq White and Kiyan Anthony? I don't think it's a good idea at all. And it leaves me kind of depressed. And I get that there's more. There's Luke Fennell and Aaron Womack. Luke Fennell, though, is a low-end four-star recruit. He's outside the top 100. How much of an impact do you really think he's going to make this upcoming season? How much impact do you think a three-star like Aaron Womack is going to make this upcoming season? It's great for the future. So for seasons 2026, 27, and beyond. But for next year, 2025, 2026, you really think that this high school recruiting class is going to make such a significant impact? I just don't see it. Which means that Syracuse basketball is going to have to find its major contributors in the transfer portal, something that they have not been able to do under Adrian Autry in 2 years. They have failed miserably in the portal since Adrian Autry has taken over. And I guess the final thing I'll leave you all with here on this depression stage, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I'm about to say here, all right? So pay attention, okay? What if Adrian Autry recruits someone absolutely crazy in the 2026 recruiting class? I mean, after all, Autry has shown he could recruit out of high school, at least get some highly rated players. I mean, he got Donnie Freeman, number 6 overall player in the country. He got Elijah Chapa-Moore, who was borderline top 50, but he was certainly a consensus 4-star recruit. He's got a top 10 high school recruiting class in 2025, led by Sadiq White and Kiyan Anthony. He's been able to recruit out of high school. So what if they get, I don't know, 5-star Jordan Smith, who I believe is from Virginia? What if they get him? They might. That would be great. I think we'd all be very happy. But would that give Adrian Autry an automatic year 4? See, you think I might sound crazy, but I don't necessarily think that Adrian Autry is tournament or being canned next season. I don't know. And it makes me kind of sad because how much longer can we really do this for? That's why I would rather just pull the trigger now, because at some point in time, he can get all the high school recruits if he wants. If he doesn't win, you're going to have to let him go anyway. And at some point, you're going to have to bite the bullet of you're going to maybe lose a high school recruit or two. It could happen. But hey, I mean, if they get Jordan Smith, who's a top 10 overall player in the country, a 5-star that every school is going after, you get him. What if Syracuse basketball wins 17, 18 regular season games? They once again don't make the NCAA tournament, but they have this awesome recruit coming in. Maybe they have 2 awesome recruits coming in. Would that give Adrian Autry a year 4? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Because most people that you will talk to, that I have at least talked to, have said that Adrian Autry, if he doesn't win in year 3, he's gone. And I just don't know if that's true. So that's depression and bargaining before that. We have gone through the first 4 stages of grief here: denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. And once again, we are reacting to the fact that Jeff Goodman, Field of 68 basketball analyst, reported earlier today that Adrian Autry is expected to return to Syracuse basketball as the head coach this upcoming season, per his sources. So coming up, we're going to just accept it. And we're going to move on from it. And we're never going to talk about firing Adrian Autry again for the rest of this season, or at least I won't. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking maybe for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the finale here of this podcast. The final stage of grief is acceptance. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time as a fan base that we accept that Adrian Autry is returning as the head coach, or is expected to be back with Syracuse this upcoming season. 66% of you all on CNY Central, over 2,100 votes, believe that they don't want Adrian Autry back another year. And I'm in that boat too. I do not want Adrian Autry back another season here. But the reality is, he's going to be back. And we have to accept it. And what we have to accept now is what the university is thinking. They are going to try to build the best possible infrastructure around Adrian Autry so that this team can hopefully win games next season. Number one, I think it's all but guaranteed Syracuse basketball is going to have more money to work with this offseason. So according to Syracuse.com's Mike Waters, in that article he wrote about Syracuse's failures in the transfer portal last offseason, he cited how the Orange had about $2 million in their NIL budget for this season. $2 million. Syracuse basketball can quite literally roll into next season with the same exact budget of $2 million-ish, except they'll also have $1 million more. So it would really be a $3 million budget. And you might be saying, how is that possible? I'll tell you how. Because Syracuse basketball next season is scheduled to play in the Vegas NIL Players Era Tournament, which gives every participating team and its players specifically $1 million. It's not $1 million per player. It's $1 million to be split among the players on the team. So that increases your NIL budget dramatically. Right there. That's $1 million that you get just for showing up to Vegas next year. That's going to be pretty cool, right? Plus, Syracuse Syracuse Athletics, I should say, launched a $50 million fundraising campaign to, well, let's face it, get better in their athletics. All sports. They're also, according to John Wildhack, the athletic director, going to spend to the max as far as revenue, right? The House settlement, the fact that now Syracuse can, and all schools directly pay their athletes. Well, Syracuse, you can only spend a maximum of $20.5 million. The Orange are going to spend to the cap. They're going to spend the absolute max, according to John Wildhack. That's a good thing. And I get it's for all the programs, but unless Title IX steps in here, so far they haven't been able to, most of that money is going to go to two programs. It's going to go to football and men's basketball, like the overwhelming majority of that $20.5 million. So they're going to have more money to work with next season, right? And number two, Syracuse basketball has a general manager. They hired Alex Klein last summer. He had been a scout with the New York Knicks. He's a Syracuse alum, actually fairly recently. And Mike Waters pointed out in his transfer portal article that they were really unprepared for the portal, which to me is more of an indictment on Syracuse, but whatever. They're going to say that that's an excuse, I guess. Fine, we're in the acceptance part. I have to remind myself, we're accepting it. So they were unprepared. Okay, well, hope is that by having this GM in Alex Klein, that they will be more ready for the transfer portal, which is going to be coming up in just a few weeks. Hopefully, Alex Klein can do a lot of the dirty work for Syracuse basketball. He can maybe get a head start on figuring out which players might enter the transfer portal, which players that Syracuse basketball might want to target, and probably most importantly, get their asking price, their evaluations, so that they can start bidding on these players. That's the goal. And then you have Adrian Autry and his staff come in and say, hey, these are the players in the portal that we like. Here's who we don't like. And they can all come together to build the best possible roster for next season. I have also heard from several sources directly that Alex Klein, he's out there in the recruiting trail. And specifically high school recruiting I'm referring to. He's out there. So he's hopefully going to help this program out tremendously this offseason and for off seasons in the future. The bottom line is this: resources and preparedness should not be an issue for Syracuse basketball going forward. They shouldn't be. That Adrian Autry going forward should not have that excuse lined up for him anymore. And we have to accept that. And hopefully, he proves us not all wrong, because not everyone wants Adrian Autry gone after 2 years. But hopefully, he proves many of us wrong. And for the people that do want him back for a third year, hopefully, he proves those people right. That's the goal. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. What are your thoughts on Syracuse basketball expecting to bring back Adrian Autry another year per Jeff Goodman? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that next year is tournament or bust, or do you think that there's a scenario where he gets a year 4 if they don't make the NCAA tournament? Where are you at in your stage of grief? I'm already accepting it. Let me know where you're at in it in the comments section below. Now, as far as what is coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the future, got a ton to look forward to, ladies and gentlemen. So tomorrow, Syracuse basketball is back in action. They are playing at SMU at 9 p.m. Eastern, and there will be a full post-game reaction podcast here on Locked On Syracuse. Plus, we got a couple more future episodes lined up for you all. Basketball transfer portal lessons. At some point this week, we're going to talk about maybe some myths, talk about some strategies, how Syracuse should build its roster in the transfer portal. And I'd love to hear your take on it in the comments section below. Feel free to give me some ideas. What are your thoughts on how Syracuse should attack the transfer portal this offseason? All right. Plus, we're going to also switch gears at some point to talk about Syracuse football recruiting with Brian Smith, Locked On recruiting expert, because according to him, Syracuse is building a lot of momentum in the Sunshine State. For those that don't know what the Sunshine State is, that is the state of Florida, where I'm actually from, ladies and gentlemen. And Syracuse basketball is apparently, or not basketball, football is recruiting quite well down in the state of Florida. So those are some future episodes coming up here on Locked On Syracuse. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On College Basketball Podcast with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. It's March, and you can be the most informed college basketball fan right now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And I will see you all again soon.